This is how wealth quietly moves from the unprepared to the prepared. Not through headlines, not through market crashes you can see coming, and definitely not through sudden moments of chaos. It happens slowly, methodically, almost politely, so quietly, in fact, that most people don't even realize it as happening until they look back and wonder how they ended up so far behind. Today, we're not talking about getting rich quick. We're not talking about predictions, price targets, or hype. We're talking about how wealth actually changes hands, and why, throughout history, preparation matters more than intelligence. Timing matters more than effort, and understanding the system matters more than just trusting it. Let's break this down. First, let's talk about the big misunderstanding. Most people believe wealth is lost in dramatic moments. They imagine stock market crashes, bank failures, or economic collapses that unfold overnight. But that's not how wealth is usually lost. In reality, wealth rarely disappears in a single moment. It moves. It shifts gradually, legally, and often invisibly, from those who are positioned poorly to those who understood the mechanics early. The unprepared don't wake up one morning completely broke. Instead, they experience a long sequence of manageable losses. Prices rise a little, savings buy a little less, debt becomes harder to escape. Opportunities feel further out of reach. Nothing feels catastrophic until years later, when the gap becomes undeniable. So why do these wealth transfers feel invisible? Because the most effective ones don't feel violent. They feel administrative. They happen through policy adjustments, interest rate changes, currency expansion, and subtle rule changes most people never read. Life goes on. People still go to work, markets still open, and stores remain stocked. And because daily life continues, people assume stability still exists. But stability isn't the absence of change. It's the appearance of continuity while the foundation shifts underneath. By the time that change becomes obvious, the transfer is already complete. The first major mechanism of this quiet wealth transfer is the erosion of purchasing power. Inflation doesn't confiscate money from your account. It simply reduces what that money can do. At first, the change feels small. A little more for groceries, higher rent, rising insurance premiums. But over time, the math becomes brutal. If your savings grow at 2% while inflation runs at 6% or 7%, you're not preserving wealth. You're transferring it. And here's the critical point most people miss, that lost purchasing power won't just vanish. It flows upward to those who control assets, pricing power, and leverage. Next, let's look at debt. Debt is one of the most misunderstood forces in finance. To most people, debt feels like a personal burden. But at a system level, debt is a redistribution mechanism. When currency loses value, debts denominated in that currency become easier to service, but only for those whose income or assets rise with inflation. For those without assets, it's the opposite. Their wages lag behind, their expenses rise faster than their income, and the same debt becomes heavier over time. This is how wealth quietly moves from labor to ownership, from savers to borrowers with assets. This brings us to promises versus reality. This is where the real divide begins. The unprepared hold promises. Promises that their savings will retain value. Promises that systems will remain stable. The prepared hold reality. They hold things that exist outside balance sheets, digital ledgers, and political decision-making. Throughout history, periods of monetary expansion always expose this divide. Not because of speculation, but because promises multiply faster than reality. Finally, why do real assets reprice during these transitions? Every major economic transition follows a similar pattern. Paper claims expand rapidly. Currency supply grows faster than production. Financial assets multiply faster than real goods. Eventually, reality catches up. When that happens, real assets don't suddenly become more valuable. They simply become more honest. They reflect the true cost of scarcity. This is why real assets consistently play a role during wealth transfer periods, not because they are fashionable, but because they cannot be diluted. Understanding these mechanics is the first step. Thanks for watching, and be sure to follow for more insights. Section 7. The monetary role of silver deserves special attention, not as a trade, but as a historical constant. For thousands of years, silver has functioned as money, not because governments declared it so, but because societies independently arrived at the same conclusion. Silver is scarce. It requires effort to extract, and it exists outside centralized control. In periods of stability, silver is ignored. In periods of transition, it quietly re-enters the conversation. The prepared don't rush toward it during panic. They position during calm when no one is watching. Section 8. The psychology that keeps people unprepared. The biggest obstacle to preparation isn't ignorance, it's psychology. Most people wait for certainty. They want confirmation from headlines, experts, and institutions that benefit from delay. But certainty always arrives late. By the time everyone agrees something is happening, the positioning window is closed. The prepared are willing to feel uncomfortable early. The unprepared seek comfort until it disappears. In finance, comfort is rarely free. Section 9. Why access matters more than price. One of the most overlooked signals during wealth transfers is access. People obsess over price movements. But historically, access disappears before price adjusts. Delays, rationing, production limits, settlement changes. These aren't accidents, they're pressure indicators. When access tightens, the system is signaling stress long before price reflects it. The prepared watch availability, the unprepared watch charts. Section 10, historical patterns of wealth. Transfer. This pattern has repeated across history in the inflationary 1970s, during currency debasements across Europe, in post-war monetary resets, and emerging market crises. Each time, the outcome was similar. Savers lost quietly, asset holders adjusted smoothly, and those who waited for clarity arrived too late. History doesn't repeat word for word, but it repeats its structure. Section 11. Why this transfer feels different, but isn't. Every generation believes their moment is unique. New technology, new policies, new systems. But beneath the surface, the mechanics remain the same. Currency expands, debt grows, purchasing power erodes, assets reprice. Section 12. What preparation really means. Preparation does not mean panic. It does not mean abandoning society or betting everything on one outcome. Preparation means understanding how systems work. It means holding assets, not just promises, reducing exposure to depreciation, and thinking in decades, not months. Preparation is quiet, just like the wealth transfer itself. And finally, Section 13, the preparation window. Every wealth transfer includes a window. It opens when nothing feels urgent, and it closes when everything feels obvious. By the time preparation becomes popular, it's no longer preparation, it's reaction. The prepared act when it feels early, the unprepared act when it feels necessary. Wealth does not disappear during times of transition. It relocates, from those who trusted stability to those who understood change, from those who waited for certainty to those who recognized patterns, from the unprepared to the prepared. And the real question isn't whether this transfer is happening. The question is simple. Which side are you quietly positioning yourself on? If you want more calm, research-backed breakdowns on wealth, markets, and global shifts without hype, fear, or panic, make sure you subscribe to the channel.